This Sunday school lesson is for November the 18th, 2018. This is the International Sunday School Lesson version. The other version should be in the description box or the comment section. So that will be the Union Gospel Press version. But this is the International Sunday School Lesson version. Okay, so the title of this lesson is Jacob's Dream. Scripture text is Genesis chapter 28, verses 10 through 22. Recommended read Psalms chapter 42, 1 through 5. Starting with verse 10.
Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. At sundown, he arrived at a good place to set up camp and stopped there for the night. Jacob found a stone to rest his head against and lay down to sleep. As he slept, he dreamed of a stairway that reached from the earth up to heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down the stairway. At the top of the stairway stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I am giving it to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. One day I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you.
All right, reading commentary from verses 10 through 15. God's covenant promise to Abraham and Isaac was offered to Jacob as well, but it was not enough to be Abraham's grandson. Jacob had to establish his own personal relationship with God. God has no grandchildren. Each person must have a personal relationship with him. It is not enough to hear wonderful stories about Christians in your family. You need to become part of the story yourself. See Galatians chapter 3, 6, and 7. Continuing with verse 16.
Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. But he was also afraid and said, What an awesome place this is. It is none other than the house of God, the very gateway to heaven. The next morning, Jacob got up very early. He took the stone he had rested his head against, and he set it upright as a memorial pillar. Then he poured olive oil over it. He named that place Bethel, which means house of God, although the name of the nearby village was Luz. Then Jacob made this vow, If God will indeed be with me and protect me on this journey, and if he will provide me with food and clothing, and if I return safely to my father's home, then the Lord will certainly be my God, and this memorial pillar I have set up will become a place for worshiping God, and I will present to God a tenth of everything he gives me.
All right, continuing. Bethel was about 10 miles north of Jerusalem and 60 miles north of Beersheba, where Jacob left his family. This was where Abraham made one of his first sacrifices to God when he entered the land. At first, Bethel became an important center for worship. Later, it was a center of idol worship. The prophet Hosea condemned its evil practices. Was Jacob trying to bargain with God? Is it possible that he, in his ignorance of how to worship and serve God, treated God like a servant who would perform a service for a tip? More likely, Jacob was not bargaining, but pledging his future to God. He may have been saying, in effect, because you have blessed me, I will follow you. Whether Jacob was bargaining or pledging, God blessed him. But God also had some difficult lessons for Jacob to learn. Vows have not been seen prior to this point in the Old Testament history. Regulations for making vows will later be included within the law of Moses. Numbers chapter 31 through 16. Jacob's vow echoes the words God had spoken to him in his dream. Verse 15. Jacob's vow should be viewed as different from the vows that are sometimes made to God in the heat of a crisis or emergency. Jacob is making his vow based on what God has revealed to him. One must also keep in mind that this vow is coming from someone who is just beginning to understand what trusting in God means. Jacob has a lengthy journey ahead of him in terms of both miles and spiritual maturity. When Jacob promises, "Then the Lord shall be my God," he is pledging that at the end of his journey, his personal relationship with the Lord will be far deeper than what it is now. How can we create ways to remember and celebrate what God has promised and done? What dangers present themselves by adding memorial aids to those God has already provided? Example, the Lord's Supper. Jacob's additional promise to give the tenth has a precedent in Genesis 14:17 through 20, where Abraham offered a tenth to Melchizedek. As with vows, tithing will also be covered in the law of Moses. Numbers chapter 18:21 through 29, and Deuteronomy chapter 14:22 through 29. The tithe or tenth in the ancient world was usually a tax given to a ruler. The context shows that Jacob's desire to give a tenth to God is an appreciation of God's working through him to accomplish God's purposes. Taking vows seriously. I take thee to my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. So began the traditional wedding vows spoken by millions of couples in days gone by. Today, however, we might hear something like this: "I promise to love and cherish you as much as I do our dog, Spot." Or this: "I promise to grab your toes with my toes when we cuddle at night. And then when old age has robbed my toes of their monkey-like dexterity, I will just place my feet gently against yours until we fall asleep together like we always have." Yes, both of these can be found on the internet as serious suggestions. The first of these comes from the stilted Old English and the Especado Book of Common Prayer. The second may be an example of how pets have come to replace children in the family plans of many couples. And the third may be seen as a clever way of saying, my love for you isn't based on the agile, youthful bodies we have today. I know I just butchered that up. Jacob's vow to follow God may have been stated in common language, but he was serious in what he was promising. He based his vow to God in his solemn trust in God's faithfulness. Whatever our vows and whatever circumstances, we should make them just as seriously. That concludes this Sunday school lesson. If you have gotten anything out of this lesson, feel free to thumbs up, comment, share, and subscribe. Have a good one.